Looking for this? Do you know how much you're worth?
What?
2.5 million wulongs, that's your bounty.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Danny here. Today I'm talking to you about Cowboy Bebop Shooting Star. So, Cowboy Bebop Shooting Star, this is written and drawn by Kain Kuga. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And this was published in Asuka Fantasy DX magazine. Not a whole lot of stuff here. And this was written from May to October in 1998. With a total of 10 chapters covering 2 volumes. This got officially published in English as well over there through Tokyo Pop. Much like Evangelion and Witchblade, which we've talked about on here, this manga was made specifically to promote the upcoming anime, which is Cowboy Bebop. And the only reason why I chose to read this now is because of the Netflix show. 3 episodes in, and I was like, I'm not feeling this whatsoever. This doesn't feel like Cowboy Bebop. I said, screw it, I'm not finishing this, and that's when it hit me. I'm like, oh wait, wasn't there a manga for Cowboy Bebop? Let's check that out. Turns out there's actually 2 mangas, so this is part 1. So for now, let's get into this one. This stars, of course, our main cast. You have Spike, Jet, Faye, and Ed. Ayn is there as well. This manga is totally separate from the anime. There's nothing involving any plot details or anything from the show. This is just strictly for an introduction of the characters. How they act, what are their relationships to each other, and a bigger scope of what the anime touches on. So, right, the anime mostly is just random moments in their lives while they're being bounty hunters, but also they're broke. And then every now and then there's the main plot point of Spike's past coming back and him having to confront it. And here it's in similar structure. It's just day-to-day moments. Each chapter is roughly them tackling a different bounty as well as doing some stuff in the beginning of the chapters to set things up. Like, oh, hey, look, they're just hanging out. Ed's doing some wacky stuff. Faye's out there gambling. Basically the same kind of stuff from the anime that was just more slice of life kind of thing. That's how this chapters would start off, and then boom, we get hit with the bounties. And then it would go into the usual fray of what Cowboy Bebop does, which is bring up some questions and see some tragic moments with characters. Spike kind of just being there and, knowing Spike's past, he kind of understands certain levels of what's going on and regrets moments because he knows he could have done something better, but because he's not that good of a person, more or less, he failed to do so and he could have saved some people. Similar themes from the anime is brought into here. And then there is also a mainline story similar to with Spike's past, but here there's nothing related to that. There's just this criminal organization that took a liking to Spike, and they pop up every now and then. And it did connect to things eventually in the back half of the chapters. And that's what I was focusing on reading this manga. I was like, how close is it actually compared to the anime? Because if it's not going to be adapting the anime, then it has to get the characters right, or else it's going to fail doing its job promoting this anime that's coming up. And yeah, they feel exactly how they do in the show. In a way, I almost kind of like it more in here. It's been a few years since I watched Cowboy Bebop, so the way the characters are is kind of hazy to me. But here, the way Ed was introduced to the Bebop and then became part of the crew and then being really involved was my biggest surprise because I thought, Ed's a cool character in the anime, but I don't really remember anything memorable about her contributing to the team as far as them getting bounties or anything of the likes. Like, she's just there to hang out. And then there is the solo episode she has, which is nice. But nothing stood out to me from what I remember anyways. I've been thinking of rewatching it. But here in Shooting Stars, she actually does a lot. Eventually, Faye more or less kind of just does the same kind of stuff. And she's just here for fun. And this is a free place to crash kind of thing. And of course, she's always trying to get some extra money from the bounties by contributing just enough to where she's like, well, I should get this much, right? And then, it's all the bickering back and forth with Jet, Spike, and Faye. Ed's there causing havocs. It's all good fun times. It definitely feels more like the anime than what Netflix did. And one part I found interesting in this manga was how they treated Jet and Spike and the Bebop crew essentially is that they're pretty well known, very successful. It's just that they're just broke all the time because they have to spend all the money on repairs, or they get gypped by something, or later on, Faye ends up using all the money kind of thing. And so they're always struggling just to keep up with what they need to spend. But they are well accomplished, and people can recognize Spike on the streets, whether they were on Venus or Mars. And that was surprising to me because I don't remember any instance like that going on in the show. By having them be recognized by people on the streets, it puts them in the spotlight in a way that a normal main character would in a sci-fi shonen or seinen series. But Cowboy Bebop is not really about having Spike and Jet and everybody else on the Bebop in the spotlight. That's not their moments. Like, the show is that those days are already over kind of thing, especially for Spike and Jet. And now they're just getting by however they can. Like, their prime is gone, but they're still a force to be reckoned with when dealing with certain people when they're collecting bounties. That doesn't feel like the case here. It's not really touched on a whole lot, but I thought that was interesting. That's the take this mangaka wanted for the Bebop crew, is that they're well known out there, which is not a bad take because that is what you would expect, especially when it comes to a sci-fi series where you're dealing with bounty hunters and they're traveling through the solar system. You would think they would have some heroic nature to them. They would stand out, be different kind of thing. But that's not what the Bebop crew is all about, right? As we've seen in the anime. And finally, art-wise, I already knew jumping in, this is not going to be one-to-one with the anime. It rarely is, but hopefully it still looks the same. And I could say I like it. It is different, but I feel like it fits that late 90s feel when it comes to a sci-fi series similar to this. It's funny because when I saw that it was Tokyo Pop that published it out here, and looking at this art style, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. This feels like a Tokyo Pop manga from back in the day. But yeah, I'm digging the art style. You could easily tell what emotion the characters are feeling right off the bat from their expressions. And the one thing that stands out to me is Spike himself. The way he looks, more or less the same, but his hairstyle is different. It's a little bit longer, and it honestly does feel like a late 90s manga. So even though it differs from what the anime looks like, I think it's fine for what it is. Again, it's just a glimpse at the world of Cowboy Bebop. I don't think this art style would really work with material from the show. But with what they did here in the 10 chapters, it fits fine because it's more, I guess you would say, positive. As far as the writing doesn't get as heavy as it can in the show, like with Faye's backstory, Spike's backstory, heck, even Jet's. And then there was the moments with certain characters and something happens with them that's very traumatic. We don't hit those dark tones. So you could be lighthearted in the art style and it would make sense. But if they try to do the main story with this art style, it wouldn't really fit. It would fit in the beginning, but as we got further and further into those episodes, yeah, you would have to update the art style for that. And with that, that's really all I have to say about Shooting Star. Again, we'll be back for a part 2 very soon to talk about this other series that's just titled Cowboy Bebop. And I heard that doesn't have anything to do with what the anime does either. So I'm curious to check that one out. And so while we wait for that episode, have you guys checked this out? Would love to hear your thoughts. You can send an email to unversedpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll be sure to bring it up on future episodes. And then you can follow us at Unverse Podcast anywhere you go, and we'll let you know when those episodes drop. So thank you guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.